open field for us to look at in order that more people are able to see business prospects and to ensure India's own food security. The budget announcement on the rural areas, where a scheme, a unique scheme but a vast scheme, is being brought in is for the rural areas, particularly for 100 districts, which are known for low-level productivity in agriculture. Agricultural productivity where it is not even normal but very much below normal. We've picked up on these districts and announced a scheme called PM Dhan Dhanya Yojana, where in that area, in those districts where agriculture productivity is not up to normal level, leave alone the question of them doing very well, we've picked up on those 100 districts and ensure that we will have a comprehensive package of improving productivity through high-yielding seeds, ensuring that additional inputs for farmers is given. If fundamental irrigation facilities have not reached there, we will focus on them to get the irrigation. Give farmers training on storage, at the same time create warehouses in those districts. Make sure the youth in that area are getting opportunities there itself with agriculture value-added services. And in that, we are also hoping that we'll bring the expertise of best practices all around the world for such activities through linkages with multilateral development finance institutions. So the example that I've given is one, of course, that's one of the biggest schemes in this budget. But to give you an idea of everything that is done in each of the announcements is to comprehensively look at that announcement, its forward and backward linkages which will be required, and how that will have a bearing on people who live in that area. All these are completely worked out much before the announcement is made. So from 1st April, actually in the ground on those districts, activities will start at the earliest. So we are super conscious on how time has to be optimally utilized so that every announcement in the budget finds the ground and hits the ground, as they say in baseball language, and starts running. So that's what this budget's feature is all about. I don't want to get into greater details. One other thing which goes alongside the budget are the various tax concessions. Particularly the CBIC has come up with rationalizing customs duty and also simplifying the whole process, just as the CBDT has come up with TDS simplification. All that is there. But we have completely shaken up the IT, Income Tax Act. And the 1961-62 Income Tax Act shall now be replaced by a new act, which is in the form of a bill introduced in the Parliament. There is a select committee which is appointed, 31 members of Lok Sabha will be sitting and looking at it in all details. As it is, we had more than, I think, 60,000 inputs coming online towards the making of this bill. Active engagement, as PM would say, Jan Bhagidari, involve people in everything that you do. That Income Tax Act review has had a very big component of Jan Bhagidari. We've taken inputs from people. And now the select committee will of course go through it and invite various stakeholders to come and give their comments on it. The IT Act essentially is looking at simplification. When it was born in 61-62, it had only about 200 odd sections. As time went by, it touched over 800 sections. And it is that over 800 that we're bringing down now to slightly over 500, I think, sections. And very meaningful, user-friendly ways of regrouping sections and clauses which affect a particular section will all be found in one particular place rather than be spread around the act. So simplification and the language simplification is where I put a lot of interest in, so that a person reading it should be able to interpret it for himself, herself, and it should not yield itself to too many interpretations that everybody goes to the court interprets it in its wisdom, the way it would interpret, and end of the day you're spending time on explaining the law that you created for yourself. So I must, much before the bill is cleared, I do not want to appreciate our own people, but I will certainly put on record the tremendous work the CBDT and all its officers have done in getting this act after these many number of years. To have to work since after the July budget saying we will simplify the Income Tax Act and come within 6 months with a new one has involved every officer in the CBDT to work night and day, and that is the product which has now gone to the select committee. Similarly, the CBIC has done immense lot of work in making sure the basic customs duty and a reason with which you would want to bring in or expand it have all been done with meticulousness, and I appreciate the CBIC and its team for having done extensive work. And it is not just because I'm here in Mumbai to talk about these things. Both the CBDT and CBIC in particular have had very, very difficult days with us, with me in particular and with the secretaries, asking them questions after questions as to why it can't be further simplified. And they rose to the occasion every time. So I appreciate the CBIC for having gone through the rigor and also the pain of having to get it all done well before this budget could come up. So their contribution in the finance bill can also be seen. So I appreciate the entire Department of Revenue, the secretaries, all of whom sit during the meetings in the morning when we decide how the ministry has to go forward. It is a strategy, or you call it, it is the way in which Finance Ministry functions. We've been doing that last 5 years, and it has given us rich dividends in the sense of greater coherence in what we do. And I know they've also been put through to one exercise which they were not familiar with, but now I'm sure all of them realize that it gives them benefit. Bring out FAQs on everything that you do, much before people read it in the papers. Put out the FAQs. And I can see in this budget, much before people started discussing, saying, yes, we understand this is the case, but we don't know the details were out. Everything was put out. And that is something which the boards or the DOR or the officials were not quite used to. But we said, you'll have to do it this time. And I'm sure they are breathing a sense, heaving a sigh of relief, saying, thank God we are not being put to a lot of cross-questioning. There will still be questions. We will still answer them. But at least the initial round should go with a lot of matter of fact information shared with the public. And that's what they did. And I think for that, I owe them a big thank you. It has helped all of us. So without taking much of your time, because I'm in Mumbai, watchers of the Indian economy are here. Is it only tax concessions? Is it just income foregone? Is it also some reform in the IT? No. A big difference which has been brought about in the budget making, and a big difference to the responsible way in which we should handle taxpayers' money are reflected, I would think, in two things. With that, I'll end my speech. The first thing is our borrowings are essentially going only for building assets. And that is why when you see the capital expenditure to the GDP number and match it with the fiscal deficit, they are absolutely, completely close to each other, probably 1 decimal point different, proving the fact that if we borrow to build assets. And that I'm sure people in Mumbai, watchers of the Indian economy, will like to know about. So I thought I'll say that first. Second, since the July budget, the announcement that we made that we'll follow the fiscal deficit path, a glide path we announced, we have followed it this year, and we shall follow it till the next year where we have said below 4.5 is where we will reach. We shall reach it. I've said that we will reach it. Equally, from now, we are also going to be focusing on the debt to GDP, because as you would all recall, several years ago you had a report coming which said India's GDP, debt to GDP, will have to be brought down. And that is one of the important things with which India's finances will have to be handled, learning from all the experiences of Prime Minister Modi as Chief Minister in a state, and later known for his fiscal prudence. He's been guiding us. The debt to GDP by 2031 will come down to 50% plus minus 1. This is a commitment we've given in the budget. Every measure will be taken to bring down debt, and that is something which we owe to the country. We need to have a country responsibly run, at the same time not affect any of our education, nutrition, health, hospital services, and of course the asset building in terms of connectivity, internet connectivity, road connectivity, and every other port, enhancing our capacities and so on. All this will be done. So coming first, immediately after the budget, to Mumbai is now a very holy and sacred duty. The entire ministry is here. We are here now before you to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, with your permission, we will start the interactive session. I now request Ms. Vatsala Jha, Principal Commissioner of Income Tax, to moderate the interactive session.
Thank you, Suruchi. Good afternoon, everyone. Respected Madam Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, Minister of State for Finance, Shri Pankaj Chaudhary, Finance Secretary, Shri Tuhin Kanta Pandey, Secretary, Department of Economic Affairs, Shri Ajay.
How are you, Swamiji?
I'm good and excited. Thank you.
All right. You know, let's dive right in. We were discussing just behind the scenes right now at the conclave about how the new generation is all about finding connection, finding purpose. You were describing to me Dreamforce at the Salesforce office in San Francisco and how they actually have a day dedicated to mindfulness. So what does connection really mean today, Swamiji? What does it mean to this new generation?
Sure, thank you. First of all, I would really like to express my gratitude to India Today and the organizers of this conclave for having me over. And yesterday I did follow a couple of sessions, and I must really congratulate the organizing team for having such an incredible lineup and such incredible content, such beautiful insights. So a big round of applause to India Today first for such a beautiful conclave. Secondly, a big round of applause for the wonderful lineup of speakers and, guests. Let's do it, guys. And thirdly, a big, loud round of applause for yourselves, because without you and about the people who are watching, you just can't speak what you're sharing, right? So thank you. But what does that purpose and connection mean to the generation today, or for any generation for that matter? Mark Twain, he said something very interesting. He said there are two most important days in your life. The first is the day when you were born, and the second is the day when you find out why. Now, loads of us do know when we were born, but to be able to figure out why we were born is an existential question. And when we talk about purpose, there's a lot of people who are trying to figure out what is the answer to this question, why was I born? I surely wasn't born to just pay 30% income taxes. I surely wasn't born just to pay mortgages, liabilities. I surely wasn't born just to escalate myself to the highest rungs of the corporate ladder and feel that achievement and put my chest out and say, hey, I made it. I surely wasn't born just to do that. There's probably something more